Jonathan Stone is a shaman in a parallel world. His parallel world split off from ours in the Middle Ages when his nature-loving ancestors immigrated to North America. In this video, he speaks through psychic Cathee Courter about his nature allies. He eats them for breakfast, wears clothes made from them, and sees them all around. His life feels magical as he's in love all day with nature beings. My name is Jonathan Stone. I am coming through this channeler, Cathee Courter, and her body. And I can tell she's not going to stay out of wanting to contribute. But I think that's appropriate because we are so close and we are a team. So Cathee, you feel free to chime in. I come from a parallel world that is on a land in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, according to your political structures. My ancestors came over in the Middle Ages from Ireland, and it was the pagans that came over in our parallel world. It was the Christians that came over in your parallel world. We have, in our culture, remained very close to nature and consult nature in everything we do, including how we build our homes, how we make our clothes, how we grow our food. And that's a lot of what I want to talk about today. This is part of a series on the Venus.org channel. And I've been thinking about the other ones I've done here. And I'd like to, Cathee would like me to come over sometime in person and do one. That would take a huge translation. So we'll do it this way for now. To get me from the density of the other parallel world over to the density of Cathee's world would be a big undertaking, but we'll try that someday. But for now, what I want to talk about is, quote, allies. In a way, Cathee and I are close allies, meaning when we go into the center of our soul that goes far beyond a personality level, far beyond the level of worrying about what the other person thinks of you, worrying about your self-image, worrying too much about the polarity relationship. But you sense deep in your heart your oneness with someone. Then you know you have an ally, because that person needs you, feels that their happiness and joy is greater. If you are happy and joyful, if you are fulfilled, they are more fulfilled, because on that level, everyone in your soul family is contributing to something bigger than themselves that involves you. Now, Cathee and I happen to be from a nature's and human soul family. So within our soul family, within our oversoul, that puts out many lifetimes into many times and places that some people call past lives or future lives or coexisting lives, you could call us. You know, it's kind of that concept that we stem from the same root. Within that, on our particular soul family, some of the beings that are created out of that soul purpose of the soul family happen to be nature beings. My own feeling about allies, I think is the word in your language that talks about how shaman relate to nature. Often, you know, there'll be a, quote, totem animal. And I think traditionally in some of the American Indian tribes that are kind of popularized, you know, people go out on a vision quest and, you know, actively seek a relationship and see who comes, whether plant or animal. And, I suppose you could say what Cathee does in a very hot bathtub is a vision quest. It just doesn't last very long. Well, sometimes it lasts a long time. But it's a very simple opening. And I happen to think that, traditionally many of the so-called medicine people in a tribe, who seem to have many allies, I would bet a lot of them came from soul families that included both human and nature beings, so that when the shaman goes deep into the heart of who they are, I mean, we're talking into the marrow, there's not much polarity at that level between the shaman and the ally. They are truly one. And yes, there are many, many beings in all of our soul families, whether they're human or who knows what, There are other races, other species, and many soul families. In many soul families, the humans might be the minority, actually, if you bring in like ETs and so forth, so-called. But I think that in many of the for many of the best known, quote, medicine women and medicine men, they come from nature and human hybrid soul families, where they have both. And so really, if you come from a soul family like that, and if you're interested in the subject of shamanism, I would not be surprised if you do come from a soul family that's a hybrid soul family, human nature hybrid soul family. For you, I think it's more, especially coming from your culture, it's more a matter of getting out of the way and being able to release the human domination kind of trip, the distancing from nature, the wanting to control things. That's the trick. Because your allies are kind of like your mother. You can't ever really get rid of them. So you might as well open to them, love them, and I mean, not that most people would want to get rid of their mothers. That's probably a bad analogy. But the idea is, I think there are relationships that sometimes people feel are very close, and in your culture, especially from what I've seen, sometimes people really push against them. In other words, in my culture, I think even with our mothers, we tend to be more at ease, that there's, someone who actually had us in their body for 9 months approximately, and who we were terribly dependent on. In my culture, we tend to suckle for years and do so openly. It's very accepted, and breastfeed and more than one mother, as long as we're on the mother metaphor. I mean, more than one woman. If there are several lactating women, it's a very close-knit culture where I'm part of. And we live in communes and kind of have an extended family and kinship that way. So we are used to, I think in my culture much more than in yours, the sense of a community, I want to say a community selfhood. When you are a young child and somewhat unformed in your sense of self, if you tend to think of yourself as kind of a part of your parents, and your parents are a part of you, I think that's how a lot of young children mainly feel, and then they begin to feel like the woods are a part of them, and the other people, adults and siblings in their family, are a part of them, and adults in the commune in our case, an extended family. That sense of selfhood just kind of expands and expands out of identity. In your culture, often, I think, people don't include in that extended sense of selfhood, of those they love and those who love them and who they feel a close kinship with, like this plant, to the point where there's not that zing of polarity like you might have with someone you're dating and want to impress, but where you just can relax and feel like you belong. We're talking about that group now. In my culture, we from the beginning tend to include animals and plants and sky beings in that kinship, in that family. You won't be able to stand to see the beggars on the street, if you really feel your oneness with them. You won't be able to push ahead and climb the corporate ladder because you're going to be trying to outshine the people competing with you for those few positions at the top. You can't afford to be too good of friends with your coworkers because, again, you would have a hard time moving ahead and outshining them if you're too concerned about their welfare. Now, Cathee worked at a workplace once where there was the top position was open, and everybody just felt inside who they felt the universe probably wanted in that position, and everybody agreed, and she was then nominated as the new boss. But I know that doesn't happen often. So, my asking you and to open to the possibility that you can have a very loving, close relationship with, the earth and all of her beings, I realize flies in the face of a lot of the values that you think you need for your survival, most likely. However, I would like to challenge you to choose one nature being that you feel close to. For some people, that's a bird that they feed in their backyard. Let's try to move beyond dogs and cats. That's too easy. That's too limiting. So if you're watching this video, I'd like you to think of, a plant or an animal, or if you feel close to clouds and thunder and lightning or whatever nature being you feel an affinity to. And I'd like you to imagine that you and that, let's say, for Cathee, daisies are really close. And they're all over the place, at least in the summer. So it's very easy to find one. She'll let you use hers if you can't think of one, little Daisy. And of course, Daisy keeps telling her that any flower Cathee sees and she doesn't know the name of, and she doesn't know if it's a daisy or not, Daisy says, oh yes, that's a daisy. Everything's a daisy, unless specified otherwise. So they're easy to find, okay? And I think there's some truth to that, actually. They're kind of like the universal flower. So, what if you really felt in your heart that the daisies in your vicinity had the capacity to know you, to recognize you as you walk by. Or we can use dandelion. Dandelion's very friendly. And dandelions are, of course, everywhere, no matter what humans try to do to them. And let's use dandelion. So let's pretend that dandelion knows you, knows your signature energy, and loves you. Now, what does it mean to be loved by a dandelion? Is that going to feel different than being loved by a human? Well, I think it usually would. Dandelion isn't going to play ego games with you. Dandelion isn't going to play competitive maneuvers with you. Dandelion is just going to be like this totally open, vulnerable being. So you have to approach dandelion. You have to usually make the first move in this courtship and say, I want you to be close to me. And I am going to choose you as my friend and start to see what's special about you. I love, you might love the beautiful yellow. You might love the delicacy or the flexibility of dandelion. You might eat the leaves. If you ask, and dandelion offers. Make a salad. You might find that when you lie in a field of dandelions, that you feel differently than when you're lying surrounded by any other plant. You might start to notice that you relax in a certain way, or you feel a certain energy or warmth or sweetness coming from the dandelion. Whatever it is. I think this is the obvious way to make an ally, a friend, a lover, of someone in the nature kingdom. And it is so very different, I think, than what your popular culture teaches you in terms of allies, that you have to be special to be able to do this, that you, have to do something, a vision quest or drug trip or of whatever kind, or be selected by the plant. I cannot imagine dandelion not totally falling in love with any human that falls in love with dandelion. I have not met a single dandelion who's terribly picky, about they're only going to go for the elite shaman. I'm, they don't go around talking to each other saying, I'm the ally of the biggest shaman in town, and who are you? You're just a daisy, They don't do that. But I think there is, in the shamanistic world, that I'll put it this way. I think even shamanism in your culture tends to get a little snooty. If you have the money, you can go to the best workshops in some pretty gorgeous, landscapes to take a workshop and learn from, some obscure Indian tribes' elders that only let people of your race come study with them, very rarely or something. It's amazing, I think, how people can try to make even allies into kind of and shamanism into kind of exclusive club. Not everybody does that, of course. But I think there's something about like dandelions, even in your world where you try to poison them and mow them all the time. It just almost seems too good to be true. I think on some level, to a lot of people of your culture, it almost seems too good to be true that something as common as a dandelion could actually be a very loving, close friend, of the kind that, you know, you would pay a fortune for to go to a workshop to have a relationship like that. It's just too easy if they're growing, you know, right outside your door. How could the universe be that caring and sweet and loving? When you think of how many dandelions Mother Earth has put out there, my gosh, what wealth, what love, what a joyful life you could have. If every dandelion you ever passed, you know, if you felt love coming from it and a recognition that it sees you, it knows you, it loves you, how would that change your life? This is what shamanism is about. And, you know, I think, like for Cathee, she's some days overstimulated by the love coming from all the dandelions she's walking through. Even if she's in town on a soccer field or something, you know, it's almost overwhelming. How do I feel all that love? If I can compare this, I think a lot of people, well, you know, Cathee tells me that there are, you know, scientists who really are always coming up with new theories like, oh, well, maybe dogs actually have emotions. Maybe chimpanzees actually feel things or feel sadness or grief or happiness or bonding or whatever, you know. But, you know, you can't prove that. And so it's doubtful, you know. I mean, a lot of scientists say, well, they just look like they're hurt when you step on their feet, you know. They're really... it's just an instinctual thing, you know. And then you have, it seems like in your culture, the other camp of people who have close pets and know their pets love them and know their pets have feelings. And there's no way that scientist is going to convince you that your dog doesn't know you and love you, you know, specifically you, and have a lot of feelings that you share together. Well, you can have that same feeling towards grass, towards trees, towards grasshoppers. Truly, you can. And what if all these other creatures in your world were as close to you as your dog is? Wow, huh? What would that feel like? To go from sun, you know, to your morning sunrise to sundown, being surrounded by relationships that are as close to you as your relationship is to your dog or your cat or your pet skunk, whatever you might have. Now, if I say, what if some of those relationships are as close as you have to your child? I know that for most people they'd say, no, I cannot even begin to imagine that. In my culture, we don't really compare. I mean, like, my relationship with my children is, you know, it's a human relationship. It's about as close a human relationship as I can imagine. But I have had many, many, many experiences with my so-called allies, where they, I feel, have saved my life, or I have put my life on the line for them at times. I mean, not that I live such a dangerous life that that's necessary, but I can't say that that isn't a very, very close relationship. I won't compare it to my relationship with my kids, but it's intense. So I've probably said enough. I just want to get your imagination going and let you know that if you're one of those people that is considering leaping to my parallel world, to being transplanted by the natural forces of incarnation, as you know, many of our videos in our series talk more in detail about how that comes about, I need to warn you that, or I will suggest that before you come, try to get that little heart of yours opened up a lot more. Try to start loving everyone in your universe, so that you don't, leap to my world and get blasted with love, which probably wouldn't happen because you have to initiate it yourself too. You have to be open to it. But you might want to take some little steps at seeing how loved you dare feel. Will you feel out of control if you come to see that the grasses around you are conscious beings too, who have the capacity to love you? Well, that shatters some inherent, I'd say, prejudice. Well, you feel safe in a world where everything around you loves you, where all the other nature beings love you. Can you handle that? Life can be so magical if you open to this. It can just be thrilling to be in love every day, everywhere you go, in love, really in love. So I'll leave you with that thought. And I will also leave you with the thought that even though I'm not in the same room with you, I am in relationship with you too. And I would ask you to open to a loving relationship with me. Whether this is the only video of me talking that you'll ever see, or if you'll see my other videos, I would love for the people listening to these videos and watching me come through Cathee. And I'm sure she would love it too if you come with an attitude of opening your heart, recognizing that we do have a relationship, and letting it be the most beautiful, flowering relationship we can have this way. I mean, I wish you could talk back to me. I wish that you were in the room with me, but we'll start with this. Maybe someday you will be. And I would like to just, as much as I can, have this be felt, send you love, in the same way I would approach a new ally I wanted to court, a daisy, say, just come on, open up. Who says technology has to be impersonal? I'm learning to use it to reach you. Thank you. all of your ecological movements really depend on the very simple act of love for other beings.